hoje nós vamos falar também sobre aquecimento global.
I am Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America. These are actual measurements of atmospheric temperature since our Civil War. In any given year, it might look like it's going down, but the overall trend is extremely clear. And in recent years, it's uninterrupted, and it is intensifying. In fact, if you look at the 10 hottest years ever measured in this atmospheric record, they've all occurred in the last 14 years. And the hottest of all was 2005.
What's more, most of the rise in temperature occurred before 1940, during a period when industrial production was relatively insignificant. After the Second World War, during the post-war economic boom, temperatures, in theory, should have shot up. But they didn't. They fell. Not for 1 or 2 years, but for 4 decades. In fact, paradoxically, it wasn't until the world economic recession in the 1970s that they stopped falling.
And the red is warm. Now, I show this for a couple of reasons. Number one, the so-called skeptics will sometimes say, oh, this whole thing, this is a cyclical phenomenon. There was a medieval warming period after all. Well, yeah, there was. There it is right there. There are 2 others. But compared to what's going on now...
Before the Little Ice Age, we find a balmy golden era when temperatures were higher than they are today, a time known to climatologists as the medieval warm period.
Here's what that record shows. Starting in 1970, there was a precipitous drop-off in the amount and extent and thickness of the Arctic ice cap. It has diminished by 40% in 40...
Não, o gelo derrete e congela de novo. Tem os seus ciclos, né? Isso já é muito conhecido desde o final da Segunda Guerra Mundial.
This data from NASA's meteorological satellites shows the huge natural expansion and contraction of the polar sea ice taking place in the 1990s. And his colleagues examined 400 years of astronomical records to compare sunspot activity against temperature variation. Once again, they found that variations in solar activity were intimately linked to temperature variation on Earth. It was the sun, it seemed, not carbon dioxide or anything else, that was driving changes in the climate.
Each one of us is a cause of global warming, but each of us can make choices to change that. With the things we buy, the electricity we use, the cars we drive, we can make choices to bring our individual carbon emissions to zero. The solutions are in our...
Humans produce a small fraction in the single digits percentage-wise of the CO2 that is produced in the atmosphere.
Volcanoes produce more CO2 each year than all the factories and cars and planes and other sources of man-made carbon dioxide put together. More still comes from animals and bacteria, which produce about 150 gigatons of CO2 each year, compared to a mere 6.5 gigatons from humans. An even larger source of CO2 is dying vegetation, from falling leaves, for example, in the autumn. But the biggest source of CO2 by far is the oceans.
Raindrops keep falling on my head, and just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling. So